Welcome to our channel. Here's a new story for you. After 20 years, Bob and Jimmy Wells were good friends from a young age. They had spent many years together. On that day, they stood and talked quietly. Bob looked at Jimmy and spoke first. "I am leaving soon," Bob said. "My life is going to change." Jimmy looked at him and nodded. "I know," he said. "Life does that." Bob took a small pause and said, "I do not know where I will go. I do not know what kind of man I will become. But I do not want to forget you." Jimmy answered softly, "You will not forget. Real friends do not forget." Bob smiled a little. "Time is strong," he said. "It can change people." Jimmy replied, "Yes, time changes faces, but it does not always change the heart." Bob felt calm after hearing this. He said, "I want to try something new. I want to grow. I want to see what life gives me." Jimmy listened carefully. "That is good," he said. "Everyone should follow his path." Then Jimmy spoke about himself. "I will stay here," he said. "I want a simple life. I want to live honestly. I want to do my duty every day." Bob looked at him and said, "You were always like this, honest and steady." Jimmy smiled. "And you were always brave," he said. There was a short silence between them. Then Bob spoke again. His voice was serious. "Jimmy," he said, "let us make a promise." Jimmy looked at him. "What promise?" he asked. Bob said, "After 20 years we meet again. No matter where life takes us, no matter how different we become." Jimmy thought for a moment. Then he said, "20 years is a long time." Bob replied, "I know, but true friendship is strong." Jimmy nodded. "Yes," he said, "true friendship can wait." Bob said, "We may change, our faces may change, our lives may change." Jimmy answered, "But we will still know each other." Bob smiled. "The heart remembers," he said. "The heart always remembers," Jimmy replied. Bob felt happy. "This promise gives me strength," he said. "It makes leaving easier." Jimmy said, "Promises keep people close, even when they are far away." Soon, it was time to go. Bob looked at Jimmy one last time. "I will come back," he said. "I will be here," Jimmy answered. They did not say anything more. They did not need to. Bob walked away. Jimmy stayed and watched him go. Both carried the same promise inside their hearts. Years would pass. Life would move on. But this promise would wait. It would wait quietly for the day Bob and Jimmy Wells would meet again after 20 years. 20 years passed. Life moved forward for both men. Bob went far and lived many years away. Jimmy Wells stayed and followed his duty. They did not meet. They did not write. But the promise stayed alive inside them. On one night, Bob came back. He stood alone and waited. He checked the time again and again. He felt nervous. He felt hopeful. He spoke to himself and said that 20 years was a long time, but promises are stronger than time. He said that Jimmy would come. He believed it. As Bob waited, a police officer came near him. The officer looked at Bob and spoke calmly. He asked why Bob was standing there so late. Bob answered without fear. He said he was waiting for a friend. He said they had made a promise many years ago. He said they promised to meet after 20 years. The officer listened and looked at Bob's face. He asked Bob about his friend. Bob spoke with feeling. He said his friend's name was Jimmy Wells. He said Jimmy was honest and kind. He said Jimmy was not very smart, but he was true. He said Jimmy would never break a promise. The officer smiled slightly and said Jimmy sounded like a good man. Bob felt proud and said yes, Jimmy was a good man. He said even after 20 years, he trusted him. He said friendship does not die easily. The officer stayed for a moment and then said he had to go. Before leaving, he looked at Bob again. He said he hoped Bob's friend would come. Bob thanked him and said he was sure Jimmy would arrive soon. After some time, another police officer came. This officer looked different. He looked at Bob closely and spoke firmly. He said Bob had to come with him. Bob felt confused. He asked why. The officer did not explain much. He simply said, Bob must go with him now. Bob felt uneasy but followed. As they walked, Bob spoke. He said he was waiting for his friend. He said they had a promise. He said his friend would come any moment. The officer listened quietly and said nothing. Soon the officer stopped and gave Bob a small note. He told Bob to read it. Bob opened the note slowly. His hands felt heavy. His eyes moved over the words. The note said that Jimmy Wells was the first officer. It said Jimmy recognized Bob at once. It said Bob had changed, but Jimmy still knew him. It said Jimmy learned that Bob was now a wanted man. It said Jimmy could not arrest his old friend himself. It was too hard for him. So he asked another officer to do it. Bob finished reading the note. He stood still. He did not speak. His face showed shock and pain. He understood everything now. He understood Jimmy's silence. He understood the look in his eyes. Bob spoke softly and said Jimmy kept his promise. He came. He recognized him. He did his duty. Bob felt hurt, but he also felt respect. He knew Jimmy did the right thing. The officer waited quietly. Bob took a deep breath and nodded. He said nothing more. The promise was kept, but in a way he never expected. That night ended differently than Bob had hoped. But the promise was real. The friendship was real. And Jimmy Wells stayed honest till the end. Bob stood quietly when the other police officer came closer to him. The officer looked at Bob's face and spoke in a firm voice. He said that Bob had to come with him. Bob felt confused. He asked why this was happening. The officer did not explain much. He simply said that it was his duty and Bob had to follow him. As they walked, Bob kept thinking about the first police officer. He felt something strange. He said softly that the officer who spoke to him earlier felt familiar. He said the voice felt known. He said the way he spoke felt close to his heart. The second officer listened but did not reply. After some time, the officer stopped and handed Bob a small note. He told Bob to read it carefully. Bob opened the note and began to read. His hands moved slowly. His eyes stayed on the words. The note said that the first police officer was Jimmy Wells. It said that Jimmy recognized Bob the moment he saw him. It said that Jimmy knew Bob had changed. It also said that Jimmy could not arrest his old friend himself. Bob stopped walking. His heart felt heavy. He read the note again. He understood everything now. He spoke quietly to himself and said that Jimmy had kept the promise. He came. He waited. He recognized him, but he also followed his duty. Bob remembered Jimmy's words from long ago. He remembered Jimmy saying that honesty matters. He remembered Jimmy saying that duty comes first. Bob felt pain, but he also felt respect. He said softly that Jimmy was still the same person, honest, steady, strong. The second officer stood nearby and waited. Bob folded the note carefully. He looked up and said that he understood now. He said that life changes people in different ways. He said some people change their paths. Some people change their hearts. He said Jimmy did not change his heart. Bob took a deep breath. He said that 20 years ago they made a promise. He said Jimmy kept it in his own way. He said friendship was not broken that night. He said it was tested. As they moved forward, Bob stayed quiet. He did not argue. He did not complain. He accepted what was happening. He carried sadness, but also respect. He carried regret, but also understanding. In his heart, Bob spoke to Jimmy. He said goodbye without words. He said that some friendships do not end with anger. He said some friendships end with truth. The story ends with a simple message. Life gives choices. Friendship is important, but honesty and duty are greater. True character shows when doing the right thing is hard. Jimmy Wells chose duty with a heavy heart, and that choice made him truly honest. Some hard words appear in the story. Now we will explain their meaning so you can understand the story easily. Pause. Meaning: a short stop. Example: he took a pause before speaking. Steady, meaning calm and strong. Example: he stayed steady in hard times. Brave, meaning not afraid. Example: he was brave enough to leave. Serious, meaning very focused. Example: his voice sounded serious. Promise, meaning a strong word to do something. Example: he made a promise to return. Recognize, meaning know someone again. Example: he could recognize his friend. Strength, meaning inner power. Example: the promise gave him strength. Silence, meaning no sound. Example: silence stayed between them. Quietly, meaning without noise. Example: they talked quietly. Carried, meaning kept with oneself. Example: he carried the promise in his heart.